welcome back to Read Fundamentals. My name is Carissa, and I'm excited to have you join me today for our book review for the month of March. This is a part of our Easy Coping Circle group on Facebook. If you have not already joined this group, feel free to like the page Read Fundamentals and request to join the group. This group is a safe community where we can build, support, and walk alongside each other as we embark on our healing journey. Now, I am on my own healing journey, so I'm excited to be able to use my personal journey to show you mental health in action. I use my training and education to give you guys tools and strategies to help you become more resilient in the face of adversity. So I will be utilizing these same tools throughout my journey and share with you how I implement them as I heal. So before we get into the book, I want to take a second to ask you guys to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more mental health and self-care videos. I will be doing a book review each month as I embark on my healing journey, and I'm going to share with you an overview of the book and how it resonated with me personally. Now, these are not sponsored, and I bought these books with my own money. Reading these books are a part of my self-care. So I'm catering to my self, spirituality, and self as an individual. So this is part of the extensions of self. If you're not familiar with the 10 extensions of self, watch the video, 5 reasons your self-care isn't helping you. And this is going to be, I'll drop it, a link in the description box. It's on my page, the 10 extensions of self. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys. So let's jump into this review. So the book we're reviewing for the month of March is Joyce Meyer's Healing the Soul of a Woman, How to Overcome Your Emotional Wounds. This is my first time reading this book, and I chose it because the title, and I was curious as to how it can help me cater to my spirituality and individual self-growth. So I'm going to be kind of going through my notes on this and sharing with you my thoughts and how it relates to me in my personal journey. So chapter 1, Joyce Meyer talks about a woman's role. So she talks about how women are created by God to walk alongside man as a helpmate. So God has a plan for our lives. And when we accept Jesus into our life, he can guide us and guide our lives, basically. And women are extremely important to God. And we can see how important we are in the fabric of society and his creation based on how heavily Satan has tried to attack women throughout history. And so she goes into some of the historical context behind that and how even when Satan wanted to attack humanity through Adam and Eve, that he went to Eve, right? And tried to personally taint her mind and her thoughts. But ultimately, it was up to, basically Adam to adhere to the rules and regulations as the lead. But yeah, so she talks about just basically our position, how we were taken from the rib and not from underneath a man's foot. So we are the helpmate. We are to be alongside them as we go through life. And so she beckons us, those who have been wounded, those who have been going through trauma, to open our hearts up again. Because protecting ourselves only leads to negative changes in our emotions, right? And this is basically a defense mechanism that we use to avoid being hurt again, right? And when we accept God into our lives, he can restore us completely. So understanding that our spirituality, accepting Christ into our lives is a guide for our life. And it is the beginning of a restorative process for our hearts, minds, and spirits. So on to chapter 2, she talks about living the best life available. That we need to learn how to enjoy the life God has for us. And we can do this by diving into God's word to receive healing for our soul and also receiving hope for the future. The word of God provides holistic healing. It renews the mind and changes our way of viewing the world and will light the way to our new life, right? We are new creatures once we accept Christ. And this new life should be one of peace and joy because that is who God is. And I tell y'all that this resonated with me because I am claiming a life of peace and joy here out. My trauma does not define me. And so when I'm thinking of the life that I want to lead past this, past the pain, it is one of peace and joy. And I claim that daily. So that part really, really connected to me. When we look at chapter 3, she talks about our wounds. And this chapter is where I really started to connect with the book. Okay, she talks about how God uses our wounds to equip us to bring light to others that need healing. And this resonated with me so deeply as I am right now in the throes of my own healing journey. And I ask God to use me as a vessel to bring light into others' darkness so that they too can see a way out. And the enemy does not like that, right? He wants us to remain entangled and bound up. And God will make it so that even the very people that hurt you will witness the mighty work God does through you. He gives us beauty for ashes. And that's my tattoo. I don't know if anybody ever seen it, but I have on my shoulder right here. It says beauty for ashes. And I love this. I love this verse. I always have. It's always resonated with me because it brings purpose to the pain and the struggle. That what the enemy meant for evil, God will make it beautiful for his glory. So it's not for nothing. You didn't go through it for nothing, right? And so she tells us to make our experience a valuable tool for others, right? But in order to do that, we need to admit our own faults, right? And not just only focus on the wrong of the other person. And it's funny because I wrote a little piece on acceptance on the Read Fundamentals Facebook page, and it aligns really closely with this. Because self-evaluation is so powerful when you're seeking to grow and mature. Because so often we get caught up in pointing out the faults in others that we lose sight of what is in our control, our own actions and behaviors, right? And this is where we need to start making changes because God calls us to examine ourselves first. He says that. And so once we truly look within, our perspective on the situation even changes, right? And it's less clouded so we can actually walk in forgiveness and relinquish the burden of anger and frustration that we were carrying. And even if that individual never gives us that closure we're seeking, that we can still walk in that. We can still walk in that forgiveness, right? So that's just chapter 3. I was really vibing in chapter 3. I was really excited about it. I really connect with that because that I believe is my calling. I believe that's my purpose, right? In my pain, that I can use that. Even with all the education and background that I have, that I can still go, you know what? I can use this for the glory of God. It's not for nothing, right? But yeah, so I'm going to move on to chapter 4. And she talks about retraining our mind to align with that of the character of God, right? So we need to be at rest in our circumstance. And in the midst of the struggle, still embodying the character of God, those fruits of the Spirit. And that takes time because, we have to change our entire way of thinking. We can't do it alone either. It's not enough to just have biblical knowledge of God. We need to allow Him to help us improve, right? Because I personally feel for this because it's been a conflict of minds given my situation and going through trauma and going, I know mental health. I know the signs and symptoms of abuse, of trauma, right? How did I end up victim to this? Right? Because it's not enough to know. It's not enough to know because sometimes when you're in the midst of something, it paints a different picture in your eyes. You're too close to it. That's what I say. Even a physician needs a doctor at some point. Even a plumber might need some help with his pipes. Even a construction, you know what I mean? So, doesn't matter how much we know. Sometimes we can still end up on the other side of that fence and still need those same services, need that same help because we're people. We're all people, right? And so understanding that just because we have knowledge of God and we have, we need to have faith and God assist and God of that, we know this. But even a pastor needs prayer, right? Right? So knowing of God doesn't mean suddenly we magically are embodying all of these principles. And so I had to be patient with myself and go, look, there's a reason you went through this. This is the reason, right? Because it ultimately pulled me into my purpose. It ultimately allowed me to have a different perspective of the topics that I teach, right? Because it's coming from a place of one, personal experience, completely different perspective. And on the other side of this, because I know we'll make it out on the other side of this, and that'll give me another perspective, right, on how God moved me through it. And like I said, even with this, me doing these reviews on these books and everything, and walking through my self-care journey, my healing journey, using the tools and strategies I teach to other people, right? Because it's one thing for you to tell other people, hey, these are great tips and strategies, and then you don't do any of those things, right? We have great advice for everybody else, and then when it's our situation, we don't know what to do. It happens to the best of us, right? So, it allows me to take on my own advice. And I think that's a really great part of my own personal journey. I don't know, it resonated with me in that way. Right. So basically just allowing the Holy Spirit to move through you and help you improve. Right. And so God is a God of peace. Right. So when we're talking about aligning and retraining our minds to be connected to what God is, his character, we should seek peace and aim to be emotionally stable and have peace within our minds. So in the midst of the storm, being able to speak to the wind and the waves and ask them to be still, right? We can demand it, we can claim it. And so knowing that you have that power, using that to keep peace in your emotion. I'm not going to be all up and down. I can't claim faith and then be all over the place, right? When God is testing me or when my faith is tested, right? So yeah. And so she said that basically that's what it means to be free. That is the ultimate feeling of freedom, to have that peace, to have that stability, right? And also it's the acts of self-control. Being in control of yourself and not saying, oh, this is just how I feel, it's just what I do. Ultimately claiming your own actions, right? That self-accountability. I'm accountable for what I do, what's in my circle of control. When you know better, you need to do better. So understanding that God calls us to be in a place of peace, right? And not a place of fear. Okay? And I'm going to stop at chapter 5 because this is a lengthy book, and then I'm going to jump into part 2, and I don't really know how many parts it's going to end up being. But yeah. But yeah, so guys, if you're liking how this is going, don't forget to put a thumbs up there and subscribe because we have more chapters coming and more books that we will be reviewed because like I said, this is my personal journey. This is not a formal, this is informal. I'm just talking to you guys. I'm just sharing with you guys, right? I want to kind of just be personable in this. I'm excited. I'm excited from our own journey, guys. But yeah, so let's jump into chapter 5, and then we're going to wrap up part 1 of this. So basically, chapter 5 was know who you are outside of fear. Right? So, we kind of start to define ourselves when you're going through trauma or any adversity around anxieties and fears within the situation, about the situation, about the future. And so sometimes it becomes connected to our identity where everything we do and how we operate is basically predicated by that fear. And the only way to release yourself from that, the only way to free yourself from that bondage or that identity piece is to know why you feel the way you feel. And so basically we're digging into the root of the problem. Why am I responding this way? Why do I have these anxieties? Why do I have these fears? And so Joyce tells us basically to pray for discernment. Not just discernment of the spirit, but discernment of ourselves, discernment of our fleshliness, right? Because not everything is basically pushed by the spirit, right? Some things are just our own free will because God gives us that. So sometimes we're operating in the flesh when we should be operating in the spirit. Okay. And so basically praying for discernment and trying to figure out the root cause of why we feel the way we do, why we're acting in certain ways when people say things, or why is this triggering me? Why do I say these types of things in these situations? And this was a critical turning point for me personally in my situation, because once I really stopped and assessed like why I was snapping, I got to this point, it was maybe last year, where I was on edge, like super on edge. And I'm just like, and I'm looking around and it didn't innately see anything happening, like anything that would push me to the point where I was snapping. Like, I was just like, I can't. Like, I was feeling so on edge and triggered by everything. And I did not know why. Like, why am I so triggered? And I started to like really stop and try to think like, God, help me figure out why I'm at this point. And I kind of eventually, with a lot of prayer and supplication, you don't realize that it was a ripple effect from the repeated trauma that finally it just caught up with me, right? Something triggered it and kind of ripple effect smacked me in the face. And it wasn't conscious yet. It was just in my spirit, and I didn't realize it. And I was just reacting to just the buildup, you know? And so it caught up with me. And so definitely praying for like what is this was a big thing for me. And I realized that all the emotions I thought that I had processed, that I actually ended up burying it. And I pushed past it. And I have a video on that too. Learning to push the process. So learning to push through. Watch that video. I'm gonna link that below as well, because we do that. We do that so often. We're like, we're just going to push through. We're going to persevere. And we're doing so much pushing. We're not really processing. And we end up suppressing those emotions. We didn't really process it. We don't even know what really was going on with us. We just wanted to kind of move aside of it and keep going on with our lives because we didn't want it to weigh us down. But when you do that, you end up negating the actual root issue and not addressing it, because if we don't sit in it, we don't feel it, we can't call it by name. We can't address it like that and go, look, I will not let XYZ rule me. Therefore, I'm going to press forward, right? Because now we've addressed it. Now we've called it out of the dark. But most of the time we don't do that. And we're thinking, hey, we're just going to keep pushing. Hey, look, I still got to go to work. I still got to do my job. I still got to take care of these kids, right? And I'm just going do. And we're trucking past those things, and we're thinking it's positive, and it's actually celebrated. Like, yeah, girl, you pushed through that. But did it help me? I didn't process it. I didn't really address the feeling that I really felt disappointed, that I really felt hurt, that I really felt deserted, right? Or whatever it was that I was feeling. I never sat in it or entertained it for a second. So it's still there, right? That's like you're upset and someone's like, girl, you're not mad, keep going. And you're like, okay. And were you really mad? You were still mad. We never talked about it. We just kept on pushing. But that anger, that frustration might get triggered by something else, and then it comes back up and you don't realize you're mad, or your response is based on the fact that, remember that thing that you threw in the basement? It started to seep up through the cracks. And so that's what happened with me. And the trauma, I just kept chirp, chirp, until it started seeping like toxic waste into my life, in my response, in my emotion. I didn't realize that that's what it was until I really dug into the root, right? And so I'm going to end off chapter 5. She talks about basically not being afraid to face your truth, right? Because the truth can be ugly. It can be ugly. You're like, wow, this is terrible. It's terrible. It's just as ugly and nasty and messy as it sounds. And you have to face that, and you have to be okay with that. Because in order to change, in order to grow, in order to mature, you have to be okay with the ugliness of life. You have to look it in the face and go, look, this is what happened. This is the truth of it. Because trying to paint pretty little pictures over your situation, it only serves to mask those imperfections, right? We're just kind of glossing over them, right? We need to expose it. Call it out by its name, and then rectify that issue. Look, this is what it is. You can't hide behind the paint. You can't hide behind the fuzzy feelings, because guess what? The reality will show its face, right? And it'll be when you least expect it. That's exactly what happened to me. I was not ready. I wasn't ready, but it showed up and said, we're back. And it hit me in the face. It's like if you've ever drank, okay? Don't judge me. If you've ever drank and you take a shot, and you like, this shot weak. We all been there. Well, some of us, most of us, okay? And you like, this shot is weak. What? And you just get boom, 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 boom. And then eventually, you think you good. You stand up to go to the bathroom, and you drop to the floor. You forgot. It snuck up on you. It smacked you dead in the face, and you wasn't ready. And so that's basically what happens when you start painting over pretty pictures and cracks in the wall, and your foundation is sinking, and you keep on trying to spackle and put little band-aids on it. Eventually it's going to fall from under you, and you're not going to be ready or prepared for it. Now I'm just speaking my truth. You know, this is my truth. I'm telling you, it's my truth. All right. But she tells us to tell somebody. If you're going through something, tell somebody. Don't keep your truth a secret. And once again, when I'm telling you, this was a big one for me too. It was because I didn't tell anybody. right? I'm like, this is supposed to just be between you and your household. You know what I mean? And me and Jesus, we're pressing it in prayer, but I never told anybody the ugly. And and yeah, you don't want to go telling everybody every little thing that happens to you. But when you don't tell someone, tell Jesus, yes, but tell someone else, right? Because God puts people in your life for a reason, okay? And so when you don't talk to someone about it and process, it's process. Process is that key word, processing within yourself, because it highlights, it unearths. Because when it's just between you and the individual, the perpetrator, or whoever, the enemy can use those hidden things against you, right? So for me, all those years of repeated trauma that I swept under the rug, thinking I processed it, I didn't. Some, you sweep it under the rug because you're afraid for the other person. I don't want this, people to think this about this person. I really, you actually care about people, and you remember, I don't want this to happen to them. I love them. I don't want this, and you're just kind of like trying to gloss it over, see the good side, see the sparklies, that they still have left. And sometimes you sweep it under the rug because, you want to shield your friends and family, right? I don't want them worried about me. That was a big thing for me. I'm like, I know my family will come up here and burn this building down. And I didn't want that. You never know which way the wind's going to swing. And then you done said it and they done burnt the house down. And then you're like, okay, well, we figured it out and the house burned down. So I try to tread lightly. Like, okay, look, I'm trying to, we all get that because you don't know. Because then people judge you like, you done told me all this and then you back over there and you're like, look, Jesus made it okay. But the house already burned. So I had that issue too, right? And then, sometimes it's, because we think we can handle it. And that was a big one for me. I'm like, okay, I got this. Girl, push it. I swore I had it. I could handle it. So I don't need to bring anybody else into this. I got this, right? And then finally, we sweep things under the rug because we're ashamed, right? Because I know it was a big thing for me. I didn't even know how big it was until I had to speak my truth out loud. And then people look at you like, really? Like, I'm going to bleep that out. But seriously, people look at you like, really? You stayed in that. And I'm like, look, I know it sounds so stupid when I say it out loud. Don't judge me. But you hate, like, just knowing that you're going to get those weird looks and people are going to be like, really? Really? And really, you know it when you say it. You're like, I know, and to avoid that, you was like, I ain't even about to get into that. And also, it kind of confused me because I know me, and I'm like, the me that I knew would never stand for this. Where'd she go? We gonna get into that too, because we had to go find that girl. I don't know what happened, but regardless, right? So it took so many rounds within the cycle of trauma for me, right? For the fog to lift, and I can actually see what was going on, and to reveal my truth, right? Because telling someone the truth, you got to know what it is. Right? So sometimes things are so hazy because life is like this. Before you know, the year is already it's already March. Like, the year is catching it running, and you're like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. So, in order for you to speak your truth, you need to know your truth. So letting that fog lift so you can actually see what's going on. And it happens in little stages for me. But once it did, I felt it. It was like a tugging in my spirit. I'm like, I gotta tell somebody. Like, I just need to tell somebody. And I feel like I told everybody I can find. I had to. I told the counselor, I had to get my own counselor too. I had to talk to her. I talked to my mom, to my sisters, and my best friend. I had to tell anybody I could tell because guess what? I had to get it off of me. This is not a secret no more. It ain't no secret no more. Because I was done with hiding and sugarcoating it. I had to say it out loud, right? Plain language, say it. Reveal the ugliness. Say what happened because the enemy could no longer use it to keep me bound, right? My truth was out there. It was out there. When I tell you, it was such a liberating feeling. It's such a liberating feeling to just speak your truth. That happened. Now what? Right? And so you don't have to hide it anymore. And so it was such a great feeling for me. But yeah, so basically telling someone like not to keep it, don't keep it to yourself. It's really important. But I'm gonna end it right here, guys, and I'm gonna pick up with chapter 6. and kind of keep it going in part 2. And I'm really excited for this book, and I'm really excited to share my journey with you guys. And once again, like I said, if you didn't do it already, like this video, subscribe, so you'll be notified when part 2 picks up. I do want to do a slight plug, that next month, April's book is going to be Sarah Jakes Roberts' book, Woman Evolve. Diving into that. So if you have not already pre-ordered that book, like I said, join our group on Facebook, Read Fundamentals, Easy Coping Circle. So request that, like our page on Facebook, like this page, subscribe, get notified by hitting that bell, and chat with me in the discussion. If you read this book, did it resonate with you? And also, are you on your own healing journey? Right? Healing from whatever it is. And did any of this stuff resonate with you? I love to chat with you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye. Thank you.